professor from Rice University, Dr. Anthony Brandt, and he's also a composer, and he's the chair of the Composition and Theory Department at Rice University. He co-wrote the book, The Runaway Species, How Human Creativity Remakes the World, and has a very interesting perspective on creativity, which he's going to share with us today. And this book is also, it's been published in 16 countries, or 13 countries, and there's also a documentary on Netflix, which I just watched last night, called Creative Brain, that is inspired by the book. So Dr. Anthony Brandt, welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for inviting me to be part of these fascinating discussions. And I'm just going to quickly share the screen here. Give me a quick second.
Sure.
And play from start. And I hope everyone's safe and comfortable in these challenging times. Right now, we're holding our online meeting at an unprecedented time in human history. We're all sheltering in place with the challenge of keeping ourselves and our loved ones busy and engaged. And that gives us the special opportunity not just to be consumers of culture, but also to explore our own creativity. And then at some point, the global lockdown will end and we'll all venture back out into the world. We have no idea what we'll find. Revert back to our normal routines, or maybe the landscape of human culture will be dramatically reshaped. Preparing for that future also requires our creativity. There's no way we can know now what's going to work for us then. And the safest way to deal with that uncertainty is to diversify our options. The good news is that human brains are built to handle exactly these types of challenges. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. I'd like to begin with a basic question. Why do we have brains in the first place? Well, from an evolutionary perspective, the first reason was controlled motion through space. Brains enabled organisms to guide where they go. And that led to the second important reason. Once you could control your motion, you could decide where to go. And that required making predictions. Where were you more likely to find food or shelter or a mate? So brains evolved to be prediction machines. For instance, there's a sea squirt that spends its early adult life searching around for a nesting place. And then when it finds one, it attaches itself there permanently and eats its own brain. It is the ultimate couch potato. Its life having become perfectly predictable, it doesn't need to think anymore. Now, in animal brains, the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that enables us to simulate possible futures. Notice how much larger ours is compared to other mammals and how much greater the percentage of total brain mass. And that's true of every human brain. As a result, we have an enhanced ability to speculate about possible futures. And there's more to it than that. As far as we can tell, other animals mainly have the ability to envision things that have already occurred. They learn from experience, but they remain anchored to it. Humans appear to have an enhanced ability to envision things that have never occurred and may never occur. No other animal seems to be able to unmoor itself from reality like we can. So imagination can be thought of as predicting something that has never happened before, and creativity as making it come true by human hands. The more unlikely the prediction, the more original the creative thinking. Shakespeare's Macbeth offers an illustration. An apparition tells Macbeth that he'll never be vanquished until a nearby forest named Birnam Wood comes to his castle Dunsinane, which is clearly something very unlikely. But then his enemy Malcolm instructs his soldiers to cut down the trees in Birnam Wood and shield themselves with them as they march on the castle, an ingenious way to conceal their numbers. And so something that has never happened before comes to pass by human hands. That's creativity. So brains are prediction machines, and creativity is based on the ability to predict or simulate something that has never happened before. In fact, studies have shown that damage to the prefrontal cortex diminishes creative ability. But that's not quite the whole story. The neuroscientist Anna Abraham has asked, How does a predictive system that evolved to ensure fast, accurate, goal-directed action give rise to novelty or originality when goals are unclear or the situation is open-ended? And the answer to that question is because of each other. Humans are one of the few social species on the planet. We're not the fastest or the strongest or the fiercest creatures, so our ability for teamwork has been vital for our survival. But in order to engage each other socially, we have to overcome a phenomenon called repetition suppression. So human brains consume about 20% of the body's energy. And a million years ago, long before refrigerators and 24-hour mini-marts, wasting energy was very risky. So our brains evolved to be ruthlessly efficient. If the brain recognizes that a stimulus is repetitive or predictable, it pays less and less attention to it. That's what you're seeing in these brain scans, which show less and less of a response to the same stimulus. So we tune out to the familiar. And that's a problem if we want to bond with each other and maintain long-term relationships. We can't keep zoning out. But surprise engages us. Our brains get excited when they experience something new or unexpected. So we have a biological mandate to surprise and impress each other. Our ability to imagine possible futures and our social natures are in a virtuous loop with each other, supercharging our creativity. And what we're discussing right now is true of every human brain. All of us are carrying around on our shoulders the most inventive piece of machinery nature has ever produced. So although this is the first time in human history that the entire world has been on lockdown, nature has prepared all of us to adapt. In some sense, we were made to deal with situations like this. So what are some keys for leveraging our creative abilities? Well, in the psychology of creativity, the equal odds rule says that because introducing new ideas to the world is so unpredictable, every novel idea has pretty much the same odds of succeeding as every other one. So the more novel ideas you come up with, the more winners you're likely to create. Several decades of research have indeed shown that when it comes to creativity, quantity is the best predictor of quality. Pablo Picasso is the poster child for the equal odds rule. He's one of the greatest innovators of the 20th century and also one of the most productive. So for instance, here is Manet's painting, Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe. Well, Picasso painted over 200 variations of Manet's painting. So it pays to proliferate a lot of ideas. Or as Maya Angelou put it, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. And there's another twist to proliferation. Because it's hard to know what the world will need, you don't want to just iterate ideas that are too similar to each other. Instead, it's important to proliferate options that cover the entire gamut from the familiar to the far out. Idea diversification depends on going different distances from the familiar. So for instance, Iris van Herpen has designed ready-to-wear clothing that you can buy off the rack, along with far-out haute couture. Similarly, Timex regularly upgrades their classic watches, keeps up with trends with this fitness watch, but also explores far-out ideas like the time at your fingertips watch, which fits on a fingernail. And universities invest in new buildings while at the same time experimenting with online learning. Think about how better prepared those institutions are for the current situation thanks to their diversification. So you don't want to just stay at a fixed distance from where we are now. You want to venture near and far from the familiar. Now, when it comes to developing creative habits, there's really no one-size-fits-all solution. Still, there are a few tips I'd like to share. The first is simple. Do what you love. You'll be more motivated. Second, don't treat what you're making like a piece of pottery that can't be broken. Instead of one right answer, look for as many great answers as you can. And to do that, have plenty of paper or computer memory or whatever supplies you need, and save all of your drafts. You don't want to have to destroy what you did before to try it a different way. That is a big impediment to idea diversification. And for the same reason, banish the eraser except for minor corrections. Once it's gone, you may never get an idea back, and you always want to be able to retrace your steps. Now, just like you need a lot of paper, give yourself a lot of time. Research has consistently shown that the longer you think about a creative problem, the more original your solutions get. In other words, it takes time to fly farther from the familiar. So to conclude, brains are predictions machines, and the human brain is uniquely wired to predict things that have never happened before. Creativity involves bringing those predictions to life. The greater the uncertainty, the greater the need for alternatives. Now, managing risk in the stock market is all about diversification. And similarly in life, use the power of human creativity to diversify your options. You can do that by giving yourself plenty of paper and plenty of time and exploring the full spectrum from the familiar to the far out. That will help all of us productively pass the time now and prepare for the world we will eventually rejoin together. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, so we have to wrap it up, but I just want to let everybody know this: the book, The Creative Brain. I'm sorry, the movie, The Creative Brain. The book. Sorry, I'm blanking on what the Runaway Species. Definitely recommend digging in on those. I think it was a super interesting talk you gave Anthony, and you know, we have so much time on our hands. It's really interesting to kind of see where our minds go, you know, in terms of what we do at that time, and you know, creativity. I mean, what better area to focus and put your time into? So, really appreciate the talk, Anthony. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Greg.
All right,
Thank you.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye.